shall I say, think back 22 years ago to keep it on track. The birth of a child on the 8th of October. A toast when my granddaddy came sober.
Good evening, Purple Raiders. I'm your co-host, Riley Sullivan. Along with me is Davis Roby.
Yes, sir.
And this is the Purple Raider Reload podcast.
Podcast.
Yeah, I finally
there you go.
I finally said podcast correct. I've been in this horrible habit of saying podcast. No, this is not a podcast. This is a podcast. Anyways, what we do here is we cover Division III football, mainly the Purple Raiders, and then we go over some OAC teams and look around the NCAA a little bit Division III wise. So let's just kick it right off. We're going to go into Mount Union's game this weekend against Baldwin Wallace. So Mount Union won 45-7 over Baldwin Wallace in their home opener. D'Angelo Fulford completes 20 out of his 31 passes for 272 yards and 4 touchdowns. This is consistent with the growth we've seen with him so far this season. Again, Larry Karras working with the quarterbacks again. What do you think Larry Karras is doing to this offense, especially at the quarterback position?
Probably just making sure that they're doing what they need to do, nothing extra, because we know Fulford can sometimes go out of the way and do his own thing, but really just keeping them in check, making sure their mechanics are correct, and really just looking for the open guy and making that extra read if possible.
Yeah, so I think we're going to keep seeing this consistent growth with Fulford. Moving on, Josh Petroselli had 18 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. This is one of the few times where Petroselli doesn't go over 100 yards. Do you think that this might be a recurring thing where Petroselli doesn't go over 100, or is this just a really good Baldwin Wallace defense?
I think the defense did play very well in the first half. Especially in the first quarter when they only let Mount score 10 points. And usually by that time they're up about 21-ish, 28. So I think that's a testament to their defense. So, yeah, I think Baldwin Wallace has a very good defense. And you really won't see Petroselli rush under 100 yards too often.
I agree. I think Petroselli is going to consistently be that workhorse running back. Obviously, as that one-cut style, he likes to make one cut and then just go straight downfield and run some people over. He's a very talented running back. He's actually in the studio right now doing the, what is it again? It's Purple Raider Sit Down.
Yeah, Purple Raider Sit Down.
So make sure you guys also tune in to Purple Raider Sit Down with Billy Beebe. He's got Petroselli this week and Cordell Ford. It's going to be a good show. Moving on, we had Justin Hill catch 6 catches for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. So over 2 weeks, we've seen Justin Hill go for over 100 yards in each game. 4 touchdowns the first game, 2 touchdowns the second game. He is on an astronomical projection for touchdowns and receiving yards. I don't know exactly what the stats are on that, but how do you feel about Justin Hill? Is he the most talented Purple Raider right now?
I think so, other than Petroselli, and I really think he will keep putting up some fantastic numbers. We did a show not too long ago with Brendan DeVinny and Billy, and you were there, Riley. It was Raider Zone, and I thought Justin Hill could catch 20 touchdown passes this year, which I think is still very plausible.
Easily.
And they're only going to their third game, and he already has 6 touchdowns. I mean, it always seems like he's going to grab at least 2 or 3 each game. It doesn't matter who they play.
This week might be a different story. We're hoping it's not.
Yes.
But we'll get into that a little bit later. Finally, on Mount Union's offense, we had Derek Harvey Jr. We hadn't seen much of him early on in the season, but he had 4 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown this week. What do you expect to see from Derek Harvey moving forward?
To be playing the way he is right now, or trying to be better than Justin Hill. I mean, if you're going to try and be that wide receiver number 2, you got to try and play up to your wide receiver number 1. And I understand you may not have the same talent, but if you try your best to put up the same stats and, run that route just a little bit better, a little tighter, then you're going to be putting up the same stats as wide receiver number 1. And I think that's what he should be aiming for throughout the whole season, is to be just as good or even better than Justin Hill.
I agree. There's a common saying, which is work or perform for the job you want, not the job you have. And if Derek Harvey keeps sustaining this type of production, he's going to be working as a number 1 and essentially will be operating an offense with 2 number 1 wide receivers. So we look forward to seeing Derek Harvey this year. Very nice guy. Talked to him a few times, but his performance, both on and off the field, is translating well. Next, we're moving on to Cordell Ford. He was the key leader of the defense this week. We had some questions coming into the season about Mount Union's secondary. We lost quite a few starters, Gabe Brown, Trevor Cox. Mm-hmm. So how are we going to replace them? That was something that we really had to ask. Cordell Ford, I think, answered in a big way. He had 7 tackles, a sack, and 3 tackles for loss. Those tackles for loss accounted for 21 yards. So he essentially erased 21 yards off of Baldwin Wallace's offense for the day. So do you see Cordell Ford keeping this type of production, more sacks, more tackles for loss, and more big plays in the secondary?
I think so. I mean, if he's going to be stepping up as that leader back there, and he's in one of my classes, he's in my sales class as well. He's a very nice guy. He's very competent. He knows what he's doing. So, I mean, he definitely can keep this up, I think, and it will be a testament for this week because of John Carroll. So, I think him and Malik Britt will probably share the core of that secondary defense, and I can't wait to see more. I'm going to the game this Saturday, and you're going to be back here, but you're going to be listening. So
yeah, I'm going to be on air for the game this Saturday. Let's look at Baldwin Wallace before we move on to Mountain Union's opponent for next week. Baldwin Wallace, they struggled on offense, but their defense did look good. They look like they could be contenders in the OAC outside of Mount Union. So Ian Mitchell looks like a stud for BW, in my opinion. He's their number one wideout. And the defense is really good, like I said, but the offense is having some problems controlling the ball, controlling tempo. Do you think that BW is going to continue to improve on offense and catch up to this defense a little bit, or could this be a reoccurring problem for them this season?
I don't know. It was hard to tell because throughout the game there were glimpses of BW having a good offense, and then there was glimpses of BW not having a good offense. So I think it'll be hard to tell, but I think it'll be a hit or miss each game until there's more consistency down the line, especially as the games go down. I think it's just going to be hit or miss.
I agree. I think the BW has a lot to build on, though. They have some smaller players, but what they lack in size, they make up for in talent. So we could definitely see them continue to become this good team in the OAC. They've already proved that they can finish towards the top of the OAC. But can they dethrone John Carroll for that number 2? I think this might be the season to do it. They could be a fringe playoff team, in my opinion. Do you foresee Baldwin Wallace being a fringe playoff team in the OAC if they go, say, 8-2 or 9-1?
Yeah, possibly. You can say that about Heidelberg as well. You can say that about if John Carroll goes 9-1 or 8-2 because of their name, they might get in. So I think it's a possibility for sure. I wouldn't count it out at all.
So speaking of John Carroll, they're Mount Union's big opponent for next week, ranked number 9 in the country. So this is number 9 versus number 2. Mount Union travels to University Heights in Cleveland to take on John Carroll. This could have major implications on the whole OAC and even the top 25. One will leave undefeated. Who do you think it's going to be and why?
The main reason why I think Mount Union will win is because John Carroll's quarterback play has not been very well, and their offense has been pretty stagnant. Their defense is very good. It always has been for the past couple years. But with losing Meglin and transitioning into their new quarterback, it hasn't quite fit yet. I feel like if this game was played later in the year, we would be talking a different story.
I agree. So one thing that not many people in the country had their eyes on, I think, is John Carroll's offense. John Carroll's offense has struggled this season under a new quarterback. They're trying to make the new pieces fit, but their defense is still elite. So that could take them to the next level, take them to the playoffs. But how long is that offense going to take to come together? We saw last year, John Carroll looked like they were struggling on offense for most of the year. Meglin is a good quarterback, but they still consistently put up 21 to 35 points every game. Could this be the coming out game? They always bring their best to Mount Union.
There's a thing where, once you play like your rival or your toughest opponent, it brings out the best in everyone. You see that out of Ohio State, Michigan, Auburn, Alabama. There's a bunch of rivalries like that. And I think it's just the same as even in Division III. We're not these huge powerhouses, but we're a pretty big powerhouse in Division III football. And it doesn't matter. I don't feel like it matters how you play throughout the season. Once you get to that game, it's all business, and that's the only thing you're going to focus on.
I really like your take on the rivalry game, bringing out the best in each team. We've seen Ohio State come in as an underdog against Michigan a few times the past few seasons. Somehow they always put it together. And then in the same breath, we've seen other Big Ten opponents like Purdue just absolutely clobber Ohio State. Iowa absolutely clobber Ohio State. There's something special about these rivalry games, and I'm excited to see this game because not only are these two top 10 teams, these are two teams that passionately dislike each other.
And it doesn't even have to be they don't have to be rivals with someone. If that's the biggest game of your schedule, you know the other team's gonna play as hard as they can.
Oh, I agree. We saw the same thing when John Carroll played Marietta last
Yeah.
year. Marietta, I'm pretty sure, was undefeated to that point.
Yeah.
John Carroll had only lost to Mount Union.
Mm-hmm.
John Carroll, fourth quarter comeback. They beat Marietta, but Marietta almost had him dead down the sights. So let's move forward. We mentioned Heidelberg earlier. We mentioned them a lot in last week's podcast as well. Sorry about that notification. My computer's low on battery. We saw Heidelberg, team that we mentioned. They are looking really good this season. We talked about them last week. I can't stop talking about them. They face BW this next week. It's definitely their biggest test of the season. Jimmy Gephardt, the starting quarterback for Heidelberg, leads the OAC in touchdown passes, and he's third in throwing yards. So this guy is making a name in a conference known for quarterback play. We're known for quarterback play and hard-nosed running backs and really good defense. And if you can, 1, get great quarterback play, 2, Montavious Yearby, their starting running back, leads the OAC in yards per carry in average. He's over 10 yards per carry. And their defense really hasn't let up much. Maybe like 20 odd points. I don't know the exact number. But Heidelberg is looking like a team that could end up being towards the top of the OAC this year or next year. What do you think about Heidelberg's odds this season? Is this the season or is it next season?
I honestly, if they keep playing the way they do, and I know this BW game that they're going to be playing this week will be very pivotal for how the rest of the season will go. And I don't have a doubt in my mind that they'll probably be in playoff contention. I mean, like you said, OAC is known for quarterback play, running back play, and their defense. They've got 2 very good players on offense, and the defense they won 55-6, but Capital's not the best team, and we know that. So
definitely growing.
Yes. So until they play, see how this BW game goes with their defense, then we'll really know how legit they are. And if Mount Union gets through this John Carroll game with a win, you better be circling this Heidelberg game on your calendar because it's going to be a really good one.
I agree. I think no matter what, Heidelberg has this momentum and this confidence about them that hasn't been seen in a while. So no matter what happens, I expect Heidelberg to come out gunning, whoever they play. And I do think that they have a good chance to beat Baldwin Wallace. It would not surprise me if they do. So moving on, we're going to go over something that we haven't really talked about yet in our podcast. It's only its second episode, but the Division III football rankings. Obviously, number 1, Mary Hardin Baylor. Mount Union lost to them in the Stag Bowl last year. Heartbreaking loss. I mean, 2 teams that just gutted it out on the field. Almost a de facto rivalry game at this point. Mary Hardin Baylor, though, does have a weak schedule until later in the season. This is something that caught my attention when I was looking them over a little bit. So Mary Hardin Baylor, not really any huge names. They did play a close game this past Saturday against Belhaven University from Mississippi. Only won 23-13. Their opening game 56-15, kind of what you expect.
Yeah.
But for Belhaven University, a team that's not really thrown around a lot in Division III, did you expect more from Mary Hardin Baylor? Like, what is it that we think is going on there? I think they're an elite football team. Did they underestimate their opponent? We're not sure. Where I'm looking is October 26th. They play Hardin Simmons, their big rival. And that's late in the season. Everyone's tired. They've been through some tough games by then, I'm sure, or at least some games that didn't go how they expected. Could this be an upset alert? October 26th, Hardin Simmons versus Mary Hardin Baylor?
It possibly could be. And, it could be the same thing with, if you circle that Mount Union Heidelberg game. Even though it's home, Heidelberg is still going to put up a fight. And the thing about, playing competition lower than you is that sometimes you play right at their competition and not, where you should be.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that from plenty of football teams. And I think that just might have been that game. And then their head coach goes, look, we need to get this straight. We're going to be okay. But you need to play up to your competition every single game, no matter who it is. Imagine you're playing Mount Union every single game. Or imagine you're playing Mary Hardin Baylor every single game. You got to play up to that level. And then once it actually comes to life, you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm. Mary Hardin Baylor's a very elite football team in Division III. I don't want to dismiss that. But that last week kind of sheds a glimmer of hope on the nation. If I'm the rest of the football, the Division III football schools.
They're not indestructible.
No, and I don't think any Division III football team is like that. People think Mount Union is indestructible, and we haven't won a championship in 2 or 3 years, right?
Well, 2 and 3 years is, I mean, for Mount Union's not great, but
still, imagine if Alabama went 2 or 3 years without winning a national
make a
championship
good point
at this
there.
point. That the whole entire country would be stunned. So that's definitely something we need to look at. Keep looking forward to that October 26th matchup. We're going to start going over the top 25 teams a little bit, especially the top 5. Looking at the rest of the top 5, Mary Hardin Baylor 1, Mount Union number 2. We know all about them. Familiar foe for Mount Union, Wisconsin Whitewater at number 3. Moving forward, St. John's at number 4. Number 5 is kind of a surprise to me. Don't really know much about this team. Don't remember them being in the playoffs last year. But North Central from Illinois. That's just something that surprised me. I'm looking at the top 25. I'm like, what's North Central?
I've seen a couple things on the NCAA Division III Twitter page, and like this North Central, I haven't really looked at their football team, but like they're like pretty well rounded about every sport.
So they're a big athletic school, just like
I would assume.
Mount.
Yeah,
Okay.
they like they're. I saw like their guys and the girls cross country team were both in like the top 5.
Okay, so they
So I'm assuming they're not just good at just cross country. Obviously, they're good at football, but I'd assume they're just like a well all around school, kind of like Mount and Mary Hardin Baylor and Wisconsin Whitewater, etc.
North Central for first team all athletic administration. They sounds like they've got something going there. It's just a team that I didn't expect to see. And we'll move on to the team that I did expect to see, but we probably won't the rest of the season. Johns Hopkins. They lost week 2 against Susquehanna. Pretty sure that's
how you
grade
pronounce
school.
it.
They were in the playoffs last year, Susquehanna was. And, same conference, Muhlenberg, Susquehanna, Johns Hopkins, they all go toe-to-toe. That's a tough conference. I would hate to see Mount Union in that conference. Yeah. But Johns Hopkins is ranked 18th, which I don't think anyone expected, especially when they came to Mount Union and had us on thin ice last year.
Yeah.
So, again, we'll keep looking into these Division III rankings, but that's just your hot top 5, one outlier. We'll probably go over some outliers next week. I really want to keep investigating these one-loss teams in the top 25 or two-loss teams in the top 25 because there are going to be some. Strength of schedule is a huge thing in Division III.
It really is because it's I don't know, it's something else, man. These lower divisions, Division 2 and 3 and, other NAIA and stuff like that. Like
I think it's chalked up too. Isn't there 24 teams in the playoff? How many teams are in the college football Division III playoffs? There's quite a few. Or is it 32?
That would be crazy.
I think it's 32. I can't remember how many it is.
I'm going to look this up real quick.
Oh, you're good. We've got Davis crunching the numbers, folks.
Yeah, I'm a mathematician. No,
this is the H3 aspect
of
our podcast.
Where's our soundboard?
Yeah, where's the soundboard? Where's our intern? We deserve an intern, man. We need someone to crunch these numbers. I am really excited for the rest of this season, though.
Go a little beep, bada boop, beep.
Beep boop 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 beep boop. I am smelling some upsets this year, though. Let's feel like there's going to be upsets. I hope it's not Mount Union that's upset.
It looks like there are 4 sections.
Yeah.
And
are there 4 games?
16 teams in each.
Yeah, so it is 32.
Yeah.
It is a 32-team playoff. So the interesting thing about the 32-team playoff.
Oh, there's 8. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, 32 teams.
You're going to get so many teams that have just had a horribly hard schedule. 8-3 or no, 7-3. You're going to get some 7-3 teams, some 8-2 teams. And so I'm intrigued to see, even if Mary Hardin Baylor lost 2 games during the regular season, they could go to the playoffs and still make it to semifinals. That's the caliber of team they are. Same thing with Hardin Simmons. Hardin Simmons could go to the playoffs, make the semifinals or the finals. It's so intriguing. I wish Division I would do this because it's just better for the fans, and I think it's better for the competition in general.
More upsets.
Yeah, more upsets. Plus, the players are going to get tired. They're going to get worn out. But this is what they do for a living. This is a college football player's dream, is to compete on that level.
The North Central team that you talked about made it to the playoffs, won the first round, and then lost in the second.
Who did they lose to second round last year?
Bethel.
Bethel,
In
okay.
Minnesota.
Okay.
They only lost by 3 points. And then then Bethel played Wisconsin Whitewater.
Okay. And then who did they win against in first round, the North Central?
Hanover.
They must be an up-and-coming team then. Someone that the coaches are really high on, but maybe not anybody outside of local fans know.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I am excited for the playoffs this year. I think we're going to see a lot of new names, a lot of new teams that not many people recognize.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Davis, just to wrap up, are there any predictions you have, upsets that might happen, things in the OAC?
I'm expecting Heidelberg to be either in that second or third spot. Honestly, I think they might be in that second spot, and I think they might get in.
I think so, too. I think Heidelberg definitely has a chance to finish at the top of the OAC. They just look like they can't be stopped right now. And it's amazing because when's the last time anybody's seen Heidelberg have a season like this, especially to start out? I don't think they've started out, 3-0 in years.
It's probably been a couple. I don't know exactly, but
they are just looking really good. And then just some final things to wrap up scores around the OAC. As we said, Mount Union beat Baldwin Wallace 45-7. John Carroll played a tight game against Otterbein. They only won 14-7. Still, that defense showing through. If when's the offense going to catch up? We discussed those problems, but they also have very big team strengths. Next one surprised me. Wilmington won 42-38 against Ohio Northern. Ohio Northern might be having a renaissance season here. They might have to slow down before they build again. Marietta beat Muskingum 31-25. This is a game that you and I were hot on last week.
yes.
And finally, Heidelberg, our Cinderella team of the OAC, won 55-6. If I weren't a Mount Union fan, I'd be a Heidelberg fan. So, Purple Raiders, that's going to conclude it for this podcast. Not the longest podcast in the world, but just something to keep you guys satisfied, keep you interested. We'll be back next week to talk the John Carroll game against Mount Union John Carroll game, wrap up some of the top 25 stuff, and we'll look at the rest of the OAC. So take it easy, Purple Raiders, and have a great, great week.
See ya.